Hey, this is Phil Yanov with the Tech After 5 podcast, and I am here with my pal, Scott Pfeiffer. He's right there on my screen. I don't know where he is on yours, but he's right there. Hey, Scott, how you doing, friend?
I'm great. How are you, Phil?
I am doing quite good. I'm going to tell you, I had some real clarity in some conversations that I had with some folks this week, both for myself and for them. And so I'm feeling supercharged about both the stuff we've got going on and the way we're interacting with the world. So I am very happy about that, but I'd like to find out for you, how are things in your world? You know, we continue through some, we got some weirdness, but things are changing. And I mean, the ground just feels like it's shifting all the time. I mean, you know, this week we see folks doing graduation ceremonies. They're doing them sort of socially distanced. I've talked to some folks who are talking about what their back to work plans are for the folks that they have working for them. And, you know, I've got folks who are, you know, now going into the office for their jobs, right? So, I mean, people who weren't before. And then I've even talked to some folks who have started new gigs. So I think the world is in a bunch of different places, but I thought we ought to check in a little bit with you and me and the folks that we're talking to, as well as maybe given some useful advice on how we get started on some new things, because I'm worried about something and I want to come back to that. But first off, talk to me about, you know, what you've been seeing with you and your clients in the tech space over the last week or so.
Yeah, things are definitely starting to change and open back up. One of my clients, I helped them draft a return to work plan. And they are implementing that in phases. They started phase 1 this week with a voluntary return to work. If you're a worker and you want to work out of the office, you can. And it's more cleaning, the cleaning crew coming in more often. Daily, when you come in, you sanitize your workspace, can't use other people's stuff, social distancing measures. We made sure we have plenty of hand sanitizer and soap and things like that. The executive team talked a lot about the importance of leading by example, maintaining distance, washing their hands frequently, being careful when you use common items, that sort of thing. I think we had, you know, a mix of people. Some people aren't ready to come back. Some people couldn't wait to come back, but that seems to be going well. I personally have begun opening my business up to small face-to-face meetings. So I am having my first face-to-face business meeting tomorrow with Brad Cunningham. He and I are going to get together with maybe one member of his team, and, you know, we'll be at a conference table, but we'll actually be in the same room. And Brett Mingo from Cortel is going to come down to Greenville next week. And so we'll be meeting face-to-face. So I've started doing that. Clients I have started doing that. Now, my sister who lives in Northern California, they're still completely locked down. No restaurants are open. No stores are open. Swimming pools not open. All that. So they're still very much locked down. But around here, things are seem to be opening up a bit.
Yeah. So so you've got some of those folks who are coming back to work. How's that working? I mean, yeah, I understand what the plan is. What's the actual execution looking like?
Yeah, this week it has looked pretty good. The people who've wanted to come back have come back. Other people are staying home. So I think they're at half-ish workforce. Even among the management team, about half wanted to come back and work in the office. About half wanted to stay home. People seem to be, at least for now, doing a good job of keeping things clean, washing their hands, disinfecting their hands, staying apart. We put in rules like you can't go touch somebody else's stuff.
Yeah, I get that. So what are they self-reporting and stuff like that? How are you guys handling that? And I mean, that just kind of feels important to me. I mean,
Yeah.
There's been a big thing in the news this week about a whole group of folks who have been infected, but were not reporting to their coworkers.
So
Holy cow.
can you believe that?
That's
That's unbelievable.
unbelievable.
Yeah, that's unbelievable. That
Yeah.
should be criminal. But
Yeah.
yeah, so part of the policy is a self-report, so that you are required, if you're coming to the office, to take your temperature every morning. And if it's over 100, you don't come in and you tell your supervisor that you're not coming. If you don't feel well, you don't come in. And if you know you've been exposed to someone who doesn't feel well, you don't come in. But it's largely left to individuals to self-monitor and self-report. It's a small company. I think the management team, we discussed mandatory things like take a picture of it and send it to your supervisor kind of things. But we decided small business, we trust all the employees that are there, I think, to do that and to do a good job of it.
Yeah, and I think my guess is you're in an environment where folks understand that. I think, where you come into is folks where either large, more far flung, you don't know the people as well, perhaps, and maybe for them it's, they feel like it's super important to be there, and they might make bad decisions about showing up at work. I mean, this is kind of when we're at the beginning end of this. My wife saw this, and so they had policies in place for their employees, and they had vendors who would show up with a fever at their place, dropping stuff off.
Yeah. I think that's a great point. We're not in a situation where if you stay home because you have a fever, you're still going to get paid.
Yeah.
Right. If you've got a situation where people that stay home aren't going to get paid, or they're going to get paid less, or they can only stay home a certain number of days and then they're going to get fired, you've created an incentive for them to, what's in their best interest. Do they go to work? Do they stay home? If you create that bad incentive, then you're setting yourself up for failure. And if you have a bunch of people that are working, you don't really know them all very well. And especially if they've got the problem, they're hourly. If they don't work, they don't get paid.
Right.
Now you can't just rely on self-reporting. You've got to do things like, do the temperature gun when they show up at the door kind of thing.
Yeah.
Or create policies that don't put this tension into place, right?
Right. I mean, I think that's the thing is at the moment, even if it were sort of temporary as we're getting through this, let's create some things to make this easier for people to do what we need to do to keep everybody healthy, right? That's just what we're trying to get done. I mean, we want to get our work done. We want to get stuff underway, but we at the same time don't want to kill anybody while we're
sure. And I think part of this setting policies is what is your worldview, right? I mean, I run into people whose worldview is that given a choice or an opportunity, most people would choose not to work. They would just want to stay home and lay on the couch and watch TV. And I think that might be true for a week or so, but my worldview is I believe most people, given a real choice, would choose to do some sort of productive work. It's more fulfilling. So I'm not particularly worried if I created an incentive that says if you stay home, you're still going to get paid, but come to work if you can. I think most people are going to choose, if they feel well, to come to work and do their jobs because they get satisfaction out of coming to work and do their jobs.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely right.
But I think there are people that worry that if they create that, then everybody will just stay home and stay sick. If that's happening, then I think you should take a look at your work environment and your hiring practices.
Right. Yeah, there's opportunities to fix that.
You obviously hate your job.
Right. I was going to say, I would have thought that being trapped at home would get people to realize, I mean, just based on the folks who are so eager to get back, that it's pretty clear people would rather be working than sitting home, regardless of whether they're getting paid or not. They're just not wired for not having that social interaction or the meaning that comes from doing meaningful work.
Well, I think that's largely true.
Yeah.
I think people derive meaning from doing meaningful work, and over time, most people will choose to do that.
Yeah, I think that's true. Well, I'm glad to see things are moving along, and it sounds like it's you'll have some learning as you go along the way, but that folks are kind of getting their businesses underway.
Yeah, I mean, I think to me, what most of the people I talk to are doing is we recognize, and it says in the policy, we're going to monitor the situation, and we could clamp back down if necessary. I think what people are looking at is the bed space availability in hospitals and ICUs. As long as there's ample bed space availability in hospitals and ICUs, I think that people feel somewhat comfortable coming to work with precautions, and let's monitor the number of infections that are going on. If it continues to go down or it goes down, then maybe you go to phase 2 and you loosen things up a bit more, maybe even eventually go to a mandatory return to work if that's what you want to do.
Right.
And if the number of beds, if it goes up and the number of beds starts to creep up where we're getting up to 80, 90% utilization, that's when people really start to die, is when there aren't beds available for people that get sick. And, if that happens, then they're going to have to clamp it back down. But you just got to keep your eye on those indicators and listen to what the CDC says and do your best.
Yeah. Now, I think that makes perfect sense. And that's the kind of thing, kind of the reasonable numbers we can be monitoring. And, I'm going to join a whole bunch of other folks that say, I think your mental state would be better if you don't watch a whole lot of the news. Get what you need, and try to stay away from the outrage machine that really wants to entangle you. Because remember, in that outrage machine, my friend, you are the product.
Right. You're what they're selling.
Yeah. So, try not to get all wrapped up inside of that. Well, we had a great Tech After 5 in Charleston this week. That was super fun. Had a great, a good crowd there. We've experimented with some things. We talked about this a little bit last week with the digital dive. We did another experiment in Charleston. The thing that we're doing, of course, Tech After 5 is about the networking component, really, right? I mean, there's not a lot of programmed event, right? We don't have a lot of bits where the people from the front are talking to you. We do that a little bit, but mostly it's like, how do we meet a few people? We do some introductions wide, and then we kind of throw them into rooms. And again and again, I never do one of these calls where someone goes, I didn't even know you could do that. This is, they're of course new to our events. They've not been to our events before, but they're going to other events which are not utilizing the feature either. And we're trying to be pretty clever about it. We've done it as small as 3 people in a room, as many as 6. Based on timing, I think that's probably about right. I mean, depending on what you're trying to get done, that's the right way to do those breakout rooms, right? But I have got some cool ideas for where we're headed with that and what we're going to do next. But the other learning, we talked last week about repacking. What are the things we get to take with us as we go into the future? One of the things that I'm getting both in emails and folks on the calls are saying, I would like to be able to do this even when we go back to live events, right? I would like to have the opportunity. For example, this week we kind of openly invited some folks, hey, why not drive with us to Charleston? Because, it's just going to your screen and doing that thing on your screen. And, we had some uptake on folks who just like, I just wanted to go down and visit the people in Charleston and see what they were all about. So that was super fun.
Yeah, I thought the Tech After 5 Greenville last week was great. I thought the digital dive, first one, I thought that went really, really well.
Yeah.
So I've been very excited, and I am one of those. I think that after things change back and we go back to more face-to-face Tech After 5s, I would still love us to continue to do a digital Tech After 5 every month. Even if we do it in a different city and invite everybody to come, like you said, let's take a drive to Charleston this month or something. Whatever it is, we do an ecumenical one, whatever we decide to end up doing. But I think we definitely need to keep some digital in our lives, because that's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, I got some real interesting ideas about how we might approach that, and I'm going to spend some time. I am spending time this week working on that as well, doing what are the new things we're going to add to. What is June? We're going to add some features in June, add some ways that we interact with the crowd in June. We want this to be interesting to you, right? So let's go do this and make it happen. So my thing today was kind of born out of that, and some conversations I've been having with one of the guys that talks to me about what we do. And, he looked at what I said we wanted to do with the digital dive. And again, my thing kind of focusing this forward about how we're going to make this work. And he looked at me and he said, Phil, to me, what you've got in mind looks directionally correct. And he said, this is a term that we used to use at Microsoft when we were developing programs at Microsoft. And he said, it was kind of the format for this was that we knew that we didn't know what we were going to need at the end, but if we at least get started in the right direction, we'd let the audience kind of tell us where we were headed. And, this was one of those moments of clarity that I had during the week, is to say, you know what, I've got to agree. I don't know exactly where this goes, but starting and trying to impact the audience. I'm starting with the value. In my case, one of my assumed value, or my taken on values, is the value of having impact. How can I have impact on my audience? How can I equip them with the things they need in the world, right? You and I, we see the world the same way. We're out here, we're trying to make a difference. We're trying to help people, right? That's what we're trying to do. So my thing was, but I have also been one of those cats who might be nervous about doing something because you don't think you got it right. And I don't know if it's whether I want to be embarrassed or I just don't like delivering an inferior product. I don't like the feeling it gives me when I'm not as good as I can be. So I've had to teach myself to say, okay, and I'm going to use the words that Dick Carlson gave me when we worked this week, which is say directionally correct. You are directionally correct. Let's go that way, kids. And, and be willing in this environment to just sort of run experiments. So I'm trying to think of how can we come up with a framework, Scott, to encourage the folks in our audience to say, hey, directionally correct is good enough to get started. Let's go start.
I think that's exactly right. And, I've always believed or noticed that momentum is what helps get projects done. No matter what you're trying to do, whether you're trying to close a deal, momentum matters. You're trying to get a book written, momentum matters. Trying to put a project together, momentum matters. And when you stall out, that's when things fail or fall apart or get left by the wayside. And the biggest place you can have a stall is right before you start, because you're trying to get everything perfect and you just can't get off the mark because it's not ready, it's not right, it's not 100%. But having an idea of the end of what you want to achieve helps you get a direction, and then you just have to build momentum. So how do you, when you're thinking about a new project, how do you find that how do you make sure you're directionally correct? How do you find the direction from the beginning?
Yeah. I think for me, and this is something we've helped other folks do as well, right? We have to apply a few tests to figure out, does this actually fit within my value system, right? I mean, if it doesn't align with my values, and let's set aside for a moment our core values, right? I want to be courageous. I want to act with wisdom. I want to act with temperance, et cetera. There are core values that those are non-negotiables, right? That's where I'm going to start. Now, the thing is, when I've said, what are my values for how I want to live my life, right? We've done, I've been through a number of values clarification exercises. You and I have run groups of people through values clarification exercises in the past. What's that called? Realign something. The cards that we've used to do this multiple times that I got out of Atlanta. But those cards, this kind of says, this is where I'm headed. So one of my tests is this aligned with my values? And if I have the value of impact is a strong one for me, for both of us, it's equipping others, right? Giving them the tools that they need, right? So if I can come up with something I think is aligned with my values going forward, one of the tests that I apply to things is it giving me an opportunity to learn as I go? Because I'm a learning cat. I like to be in that spot where I get to learn new things. Am I getting to work with the best, right? Am I getting to work with people I enjoy working with? Because to me, it's just not worth it to go have to do something and I'm going to end up with people that creep me out in one way or another, right? I want none of that. Yeah, I just need it. So all of those things I've got to, those are the first tests that I apply. But I wasn't as good earlier when I was younger, right? Because I thought, oh, I'm fear of missing out, or, I'd say I'd take things on that I thought were that in the end were sort of questionable deals, and that you work with people you just didn't care to work with you. The style wasn't good going back and forth or whatever. It just was not a good plan. So I think the first thing is, does it align with my values? And then, the longer term test, we ask people a lot of times in their careers, right? Would you do this for 20 years? What do you, is this the kind of thing you'd do for 20 years? Or pick 10 if that's your planning horizon? I don't know. But the point is it something that you can see yourself doing over the long haul, right? It's the thing I can see myself going forward and doing.
Sure. And I think that actually can cut both ways. I think in a situation like you and me, we're a little older, we're more established. There's no reason for us to do anything that we wouldn't want to do for the rest of our careers, right? There's no reason to start something that's not something I'd want to do for a long time. So I think that's a great test. If you're 22 or 23, that may be a debilitating question that prevents you from starting something. And maybe the test is, let me go do this, and I only have to do it for a short period of time. I'm not making a lifelong commitment to be a bartender in a craft brewery.
Right.
But, I have this opportunity, and if it meets with my other values, let me go do it. Let me take this risk. Let me take this opportunity. Let me go learn something, and I don't have to say it's forever.
Right.
So I think depending on what situation you're in, that question can go either way. Whatever makes you, frankly, it's whichever side of the question makes you feel like you want to get going.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. And one of the things I hadn't thought about from that perspective is I use that question even more often when someone's trying to decide between 2 or 3 avenues, right? That will bring that question up a lot in that spot. Because they're thinking, I could do this, I could do this, I could do this, right? And there's 2 or 3 avenues. They don't have all the resources to do them all, is typically what it is. If they've got any wisdom at all, they realize they don't have sufficient resources to attack all 3, right? Yeah. And so then you say, all right, well, now here's a test that you can use to kind of sift between those. But, when you talk about when someone who's like at the beginning edge of their career, how might they decide to do something? I think one of those other tests, one that I applied earlier, is one of the most important. And I say, I don't know, if you've got the money taken care of, or the money is going to take care of you, that's all good. Then the question becomes, what can you learn while taking under this? What is your goal? What are your goals as a learning individual to learn while you are doing this, so that you can figure out how to get started, right?
Yeah, so you're not just exchanging work for money. You're actually getting something additional out of it. You have some plan. And it maybe you'll learn whether or not this is for you. Like if you're a young person and you get offered an opportunity, maybe it's an entry-level sales thing, and you think you might be good at sales, but you don't know. And you don't know if you'll like it. Well, it doesn't have to be forever. And you can learn some useful skills that can carry you into, you can use your sales skills you're going to learn when you buy your own house or your own car. There's a lot of ways in life you use that skill, and it doesn't have to be forever. So, maybe go for it. But if you've got 3 opportunities, I can go over here and be in sales, I can go over here and be an executive, then, well, which one of those do you think matches with you and that you could do for 20 years? Maybe that's a good way to decide between, 3 good choices.
Yeah, no, I think that's all good. Again, what was in my thinking today is, I think we're in that time. We have lots of choices we could be making, but we could also just be saying, I'm kind of tired. I think I'm going to not do anything. And we're trying to get you off your butt. And this is the BUT but in this case, right? I could do this, but I don't know how, but I don't have this, or but I don't have that, right? I'm resource constrained in some way that I've imagined, but isn't true. We want to get you off your butt and get you started on doing something, because we would just like you to run an experiment. We're at this, we're helping this tech audience because we know the tech audience is capable of awesome things. They just need some path, they need a way to go forward. So, it is our thing here to help you in a bunch of ways. One of them is to give you hope and a path. And we're saying, if you just get started, you might just find out you're good at a thing you didn't even know.
Yeah. So what do you think the next step is? You've aligned it with your values. It's something you think fits there. Now what?
Yeah, and so I think, quite frankly, you take. My thing is on the front end is to decide what are we going to measure. So again, I talked about it from a value standpoint, and I also have a couple of goals that I have, right? So I had overriding goals that I would set for myself for the course of the year, and you kind of weave in and out of them because the world buffets you in certain ways, right? But then I think, okay, I set these goals. Are those goals still meaningful to me? Yes, they're meaningful to me. Does this project align? Is it a step towards getting me towards where I want to go? If these are my goals, again, if it passes that gateway as well, then I move forward, right? I mean, but if if it's somehow just like, oh my God, you know what? I'm looking at this and I realize it's just a distraction. This is sometimes a place where I'll say no, or I'll say, how can I realign the project to make it do what I want to do? Because sometimes I'll do things because they're fun or interesting. That's a hobby. But if it's if I'm headed towards for my business or career professionally, I mean, it's got to meet certain criteria for me. It's got to reward me in certain ways. So that I will stay interested in it over the long haul.
Yeah, I think part of being directionally correct is if you're thinking about a new venture, a new side gig, a new whatever, it's, does it meet my goals, my long-term goals? Am I helping the right people? And you have to ask yourself, who am I going to be helping?
Right.
What is it they need that I can do? And then you've got to make sure it's priced right, that it's worth your time, right? And so if you're doing if you decide, one trick that I like to use is, say I'm going to do something that's going to take me, 5 hours, and how do I price that? Well, one trick is to take your month. A month's about 20 days of work. So you can do it like that, maybe 120 hours or so, depending on how hard you want to work. And just kind of like your trick of, would you do this for 20 years? Mine is, if I did this for every hour I have for the whole month, am I making the money I want to make?
Right.
And so you can multiply that out. That's just math. And hopefully our tech audience is good enough at math to do that.
Right.
You multiply that out and you say, okay, I might not want to do this every hour, but if I did, have I priced it right? Am I making what I want to make? And that can help you. And so all we're trying to do is get the direction, right? So we know who we're helping. Maybe we know what our value proposition is. Are we giving, the best price, the best service, or the best quality? And we know that we've priced it kind of right. And then go.
Yeah.
Go try to find that first customer.
Right. So, and that's as a professional exercise, right? Or as a career exercise. The question is it even possible for us to spit that thing out? So we go back to that, and it's kind of like you said. So, if you figure out it's a month, and let's just say that's, there's 4 weeks in a month, and I don't know, maybe you want to work in, and you and I have worked people through this, like, how many hours do you actually want to work in a week, right? Because we do not assume a 40-hour work week, right? When we're doing this.
Terrible.
It sounds terrible. It does sound terrible. But, if I'm willing to work, I don't know, even 20 hours a week, right? I mean, if I'm willing to put that in, then does the math work out for me, right?
Sure. Well, that's right. And, this takes us, so we've kind of got our ideas. We kind of think we have it priced right. We kind of think we know who we're going to help. Now it's time to just start. And this takes us to your point, which is get the direction correct and then iterate.
Yeah. So so we set goals and milestones, right? And you might have, in the beginning, they may be shorter. You may be testing this thing every week. Then you go to monthly or something like that. But basically, you're looking back and saying, am I still directionally correct? Is this towards getting me where I want to go with my time, et cetera? It doesn't yield the results that I need it to yield for me to be interested in this over the long haul. And if not, what do I have to change?
Well, that's right. And you can iterate as you go, as you meet people, get out there. The best way to find out if your plan has legs is to go meet with someone who you think is a good target customer and pitch it to them. And if they say no, ask them why, so that you can iterate the plan. What is it about the thing I pitched to you that's no good? Is it price too high? Is it not what you need? If it's not what you need, what is it that you need, in this vein? So
Right.
if I wanted to create a side hustle of helping people update their LinkedIn profiles, because I think that right now is a great time for people to be updating their LinkedIn profiles, then I might figure out who I thought I could help and how much I thought I would charge. And then I might go to somebody and say, hey, can I help you do this? Here's what it looks like to me. And, you can find friendly people to pitch it to at first and say, what do you think, right? Is it priced right? They might say sold. And then you might think, well, maybe I priced it too low.
Well, and you can do that at the beginning if that's what you want to do, right? Then, like you said, that's the thing you're going to iterate. It's funny you should say that, because even this, as we go into recording today, I've got someone texting me, asking me about a potential side hustle, right? That they are thinking about running for themselves. And they just want to know, is it a good idea or bad idea? And so we're going to, I'm thinking we ought to test that. We've done some things where we've talked a few people through some pitching. I wonder if we might take a few folks who are interested, if they had a side hustle or something they wanted to run by us, would they be willing to record with us and let us do a little feedback session with them, if that would be useful to the audience, right?
I'd be willing to do it if people thought it would be helpful.
Yeah, that's right. If we can help a few people, I wouldn't mind doing a few of that. So if you've got a side hustle that you'd be willing to spend give us a few minutes of presentation or whatever, talk to us about what you're doing, and then ask questions, and we can record that and share it with the audience. I think we'd be happy to help folks out do that. Well, again, I think today, kind of just putting a bow on this, the idea is let's help people start with something. Let's make sure it aligns with what they're doing. Let's give them a mechanism for starting, testing, iterating, right? Measure value. I mean, let's figure out if I'm headed in the right direction. Let's do it again and again and again. And let's see if you can't build this thing into the thing that you want. And give yourself, start with, what we call that minimally viable product, right? What is the least amount I can get away with to run my test? And let's go put it out in the marketplace and see what I can see. And I get it. We're all running at different cycles. I don't know if you're trying to make a little bit of cash for, if you're making beer money on a side hustle, or, you're making a side hustle that might be your real hustle once the thing runs away from you. We're good with all of that, right? We want you to do well. And
remember, momentum.
Yeah. Try not to stall, right? Don't let it stall.
Don't let it stall.
Yeah, that's super good. All right, Scott, I love this. So we're going to put a thing out there and say, if you're interested in us, send us a note. You can do that through LinkedIn. You can send us a note through Twitter. You can send us a note through, I really wish you wouldn't use Facebook, but if you have to, you can send me a message on Facebook. But, LinkedIn, Twitter, or you can email me or one of those other things. But send us a pitch, tell us, hey, I may be interested in talking to you guys, and we'll talk about putting some of our little testing here. We'll put a side hustle test for you and do some coaching if you're interested in doing that with us, so that we can share it with the audience. We would love to do that, right?
Yeah, it'd be great.
Yeah. All right. So Scott, tell folks how they get a hold of you when they're not listening to you on the Tech After 5 podcast.
Best way to connect is on LinkedIn, where I'm Scott Pfeiffer. I have a website. It's www.fscottp.com. I'm on Twitter at fscottp. And my email address is strategybusinessconsulting@gmail.com.
Awesome. All right. I am Phil Yanov, and my day job is running Tech After 5. My life's endeavor is bringing strong, smart, capable IT professionals together so that they can build businesses and advance their careers. And we've been doing that for a dozen years and over 500 events already. Holy cow, right? It's a pile of stuff. So we're getting people together, and we're doing that online at the moment, but our job is to help you make meaningful connections, whether we're doing that face-to-face or online. We're looking for credible, meaningful connections. We want to help you build your network for life, right? So do that with us. You can find me at philyanov.com, or go to Tech After 5 at techafter5.com, or the simple little awesome URL, A and the figure 5, tangoalpha5.com. We're that kind of nerd. We got that 3-letter domain, friends. Click on it. We paid for it. So come find us there. And, ways you can help us at the moment. If you're a YouTube person, you could go and subscribe to the channel. I mean, I don't want to be the cat that's begging, but I'm going to ask you for that favor in the moment if we're doing good for you. And the reason we want to ask you that is because we've been doing the audio podcast for a long while. The YouTube thing is new to us, and we're asking you to go do that so it opens up some new features so that we can reach an even wider audience. So if you would subscribe to our YouTube channel, and many of you have, I really appreciate that. That'll get us where we need to go. So ta5.com, and thank you. We'll see you next time.
Bye.